Hello. I'd like to declare the meeting open. We have a quorum. Our prayer will be read by Pastor Carly Lewis from Maryland's Church.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated.
Councillors and the general public more broadly, as a result of orders made on the 17th of March 2022 in the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal, proceedings number 2020/348023, the Council will operate from the 17th of March to the 17th of May with 14 councillors.
So, councillors, tonight I have 3 mayoral minutes. The first one is in relation to flood support. Unfortunately, in Cumberland, 2 people lost their lives in Wentworthville in deep flooding when they were entrapped in their vehicle. Therefore, councillors, tonight I move the following. That Council 1 send its sincerest condolences to the family of the 2 people who lost their lives in the recent flood events in Wentworthville. 2, thank our staff and the local volunteers of the State Emergency Service for their continued hard work with responding to the recent floods and associated works across our local government area. And 3, make a donation of $10,000 to the Give It New South Wales Flood Appeal from the Emergency Relief Fund. The second mayoral minute, donation to the Ukraine Crisis Appeal. Our donation can be funded through Council's Emergency Relief Fund.
It was very hard for me to hold back my tears because it was so emotional.
But I will note, Madam Mayor, that if we're only doing this because there's a contingency or a number of Ukrainians in our LGA, then we're doing it for the wrong reason. And I say this, Madam Mayor, because about 2 years ago when I moved a motion with respect to the Armenian people in the state of Artsakh, many in this chamber voted against it, and they were being attacked on one side by the Azerbaijanians and the other by the Turks. Yeah, there are many countries, I could bring up Cyprus, I could bring up Palestine and many others who are being persecuted exactly the same, yet nobody raises an eyebrow for that.
It would be remiss of me, and I thank Councillor Sarkis for bringing up the Cyprus issue. Cyprus has now been illegally occupied for 47 years. 47 years. Every country, bar one country, recognises Cyprus as being illegally occupied, yet nobody seems to be taking any action for the Greek Cypriot people and returning their rightful land back to them.
And finally, I have a mayoral minute in relation to something closer to home. It's a condolence motion for the late Aunty Sandra Lee. Aunty Sandra was a descendant of the Gomerbury chief of the Burran-Barongal clan of the Darug Nation.
I still hope one day that we finally recognise First Nations people in the Constitution and eventually land rights for our First Nations people.
Now, councillors, I think we can start our agenda paper. So, councillors, we now have public forum. The first person on my list is Mr Royden Ng, and he is speaking to the 1 Crescent Street Holroyd paper, 2240.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
That was very interesting. I'd now call on Ms Saloom, who's going to speak on a traffic matter. Can I please call on Ms Sharon Saloom?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. I second my sister's motion, which is for the council to reconsider the proposal of moving the crossing in front of the residence of our parents and our family home for the last 40 years.
Mr Stephen Saloom, then, thank you.
I urge you all to come together and reconsider this proposal and move the cross and not move the crossing in front of 110 Blacksall Street. Thank you, councillors.
And finally, Mr Tony Takchi. Not here. So that concludes public forum.
I remember when I was mayor, we definitely worked closely with Director Carvello in opposing this issue. Now, we have a very, very wealthy developer here who wants to whack up on one of the worst intersections in New South Wales, close to 1,800 units, right in the heart of Granville bordering Parramatta. It sits on the corner of the M4 on Woodville Road leading into Church Street. And the only planned proposal to alleviate traffic was another lane coming out of Crescent Street. To cram 1,800 units into an area such as Granville on that corner is just lacking in any planning logic or a plain disregard for our local community. It's not a good proposal. It's unfortunate that the developer went to the state government trying to bypass council's laws and council's planning mechanisms. It would appear that they're on the way to getting their way here, but I will continue to oppose it and urge council to do everything possible to knock back this kind of proposal, because it's not a good development for our local community. And I will add, I'm very disappointed that when advocating for this, previous heavyweights of the Labor Party who are current members were advocating heavily for this proposal.
It's at arguably the worst intersection in Sydney. The entry points in and the exit points out are horrendous. Anyone that says it's close to a station is probably making that call from the eastern suburbs where they live. To expect someone to walk to Harris Park is an absolute joke. Clyde Station is a joke. Granville Station is too far and you're dodging peak hour traffic along Parramatta Road. So anyone that advocates for this either has no brain or has an underlying or overlying pressure to support it, because regardless of whether it's on the border of Parramatta or Granville Council, it's a development of 1,800 units where there's no planning logic, there's no amenity, the infrastructure is not there to support it, and all I can see is you're going to have at least 1,800 people that are going to be driving in and out of a development that's already on an intersection that gets congested in the morning and in the afternoon.
Mayor, can I concur with my Granville Ward councillors in as far as outlining the traffic and parking concerns and the high density, and that it is not a suitable place given the intersection. The proposal for high density housing does not meet the needs of the LGA, which consists of family households and already has a greater proportion of high density zoning compared to Greater Sydney. Local pressures from increased traffic and parking congestion on Crescent Street and surrounding streets, and particularly the intersections with Woodville Road, are not adequately considered.
Councillor Huang, did you wish to speak to the substance of your amendment?
It's basically in regards to the school around the Gallipoli precinct. And as we're aware that there's going to be a school, there's going to be aged care, and there's also a mosque in the area. So I noted the report has rejected the pedestrian crossing. So I would like to ask the traffic committee to actually look for an alternative for the viability of a children's crossing, because once the school is established, I think there is a need for that.
So we will now go to items by exception. Then we'll go now to number 39, which is the rates income matter.
In our long-term financial plan, the council budgeted for a 2.5% increase. The Minister for Local Government comes along and says, IPART's give you this pathetic increase in rates. And I think the Minister for Local Government realises that council can't fund their ongoing operations with that smaller rate increase. The increase proposed in this recommendation will deliver additional rate income of $1.35 million. The CPI is about 2.5%. It's been like for 20 years or something. We didn't get ourselves in this situation. It was a situation caused by IPART. We got to fund our ongoing operations, and I know it's unfortunate, but that's the only way we can do it.
Let me just say that I generally, as most of you would know, would never say no to an additional $1.3 million to councillors' revenue. My issue is, what's the money going to be spent on? If we move forward with this particular motion, what it effectively does, it potentially increases everyone's rates on top of the current increase that's going to occur as a result of the amalgamated rates. So every single household will pay an extra $90 on top of the other increases that they're going to be paying. My issue is this. There are some councillors in this particular chamber that are looking at increasing our grants program from $50,000 to $500,000 in our upcoming budget. That means that we're going to give away an additional $450,000 each year off our council rates as part of the increase in this particular grant program. Now, what we're potentially doing is we're going to charge our residents, if we move this motion through, an additional $1.35 million with one hand, and with the other hand, we're going to give away that $450,000 out of that $1.35 million as part of a increased round grants program. If you want to vote for it, put it out to the public. Let the public say whether they're willing to pay an extra $1.35 million in rates per year. And then, in one hand, and then if they're willing to actually allow us to just simply give away $450,000 from that $1.35 million and see what they say.
I can't believe what I'm seeing from the other side of the chamber, Councillor Hussain and Councillor Elmore. I thoroughly oppose this. It's absolutely disgusting. Quite frankly, Councillor Hussain and Councillor Elmore represent the poorest suburb in New South Wales. An official report over 12 months ago had highlighted this. The areas of Granville, South Granville, Auburn, Guildford, classified as the poorest suburbs in New South Wales. Yet here we have two Labor representatives voting in support of a rate increase. And quite frankly, this whole raising the rates is to fund an extravagant wish list that we know, that we've all heard, that my colleagues opposite me have. They want to raise the grants to nearly $500,000. They want a wish list of state and federal issues, of matters that council, quite frankly, should not be delving in. And this is a result that we get. Quite frankly, when we have the places looking like a dump, we have overgrown grass, potholes, the size of craters, footpaths that need resealing, and rather than attending to those issues, the focus on this council is racism not welcome signs and an extra 15 minutes for prayer. Well, guess what? Our residents are paying for this. I won't be supporting it, and I'll definitely be opposing this because our residents deserve better, and our local community is going to deliver better for our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
This is as close as we'll ever get to IPART acknowledging that they've mucked this up. In all my time that I've ever seen IPART set increases to anything with regards to gas prices, bus tickets, so on and so forth, I've never seen them acknowledge or give an opportunity for somebody else to correct it. This is a completely unprecedented moment.
The current year average for whole road residential is $1,015. The current average for Auburn residential is $870, and Parramatta residential is $937.
So the 2.5% increase, these are questions, I'm not making a speeches yet. The 2.5%, is that above the Holroyd rate, or is that above the Auburn rate, which is the lowest of the three?
Through you, Mayor, the 2.5 is essentially an increase in council's rates income. It doesn't specifically apply to one council area.
My question through you, Madam Mayor, to the appropriate officer is, when we talk about a 2.5% increase, are we saying that those in the Holroyd area, and this is what I'm trying to, because 2.5% of 1,015 is more than as an amount, as a figure, more than 2.5% of 870, because it's a bigger number, right? So are the Holroyd residents then paying more again because they're already paying more, or that? If that can be clarified, Madam Mayor, because that's.
It's pretty difficult if you're dealing with averages.
Well, and this is a serious problem, Madam Mayor, and that's why I'm asking these questions. I'll put my hand up to speak later on, but at the moment I need these answered, because without having, I mean, if you're already paying more than your neighbour, and then he gets charged 2.5% and you get charged 2.5% based on what you're paying already, that means I'm actually paying even more than him. I'm paying more after the rate increase than what I was before. I was already paying more.
Because it all goes back to the mergers. It all goes back to a dog's breakfast of the mergers. For the 5 financial years that this council has been running, Holroyd ratepayers are paid $76.7 million more than the combined ratepayers of the former Woodville ward and the Auburn area. But in the case of Cumberland, it's the Holroyd ratepayers who are getting it in the neck. And we have the audacity of this current Liberal government to hand dish out to councils like Paul Hornsby Council, who lost a little bit near the M2 and got $90 million in its back pocket. It might have helped that their mayor is a high-ranking executive of the Liberal Party. And we miss out again, because we are in the most need I take my point for all of Cumberland that we need to look after our brothers and sisters in the east, especially being one of the most refugees and asylum seekers in the country. And that's what should have been taken into consideration before the merger ever took place. But under this system, it's typical. It's like a Grant's holiday picnic. Dish it out so you can win votes to keep you in power at the next state election.
I can't support any movement in rates, and so I'll be throwing my support behind what Councillor Cummings just mentioned and concur with a lot of what he said. The residents of Cumberland have gone through enough hardship in the last 12 to 18 months, and now to put this on the horizon and to give them something like this to look forward to, I believe is somewhat being tone deaf and not the right timing. So I'll be voting against it and supporting the motion of Councillor Cummings.
We have many pockets of a very transient community. They are paying rent, and any rate increase will then end up in a rent increase, and it makes it harder and harder for the people in these areas.
What's the additional average rates payable per week per household under this recommendation?
Through you, Mayor, it's an additional 34 cents a week. 34 cents a week.
Is this right that the average for business rates will be an increase of $99 a year?
Through you, Mayor, that's correct.
I just wanted to reiterate Councillor Cummings's comments in relation to the difficulty we find ourselves in due to the mismanagement of the New South Wales government. They leave us in a very difficult position here, and rather than doing the right thing and providing a grant to councils, or in fact increasing the rate peg themselves, they throw the situation across to the councillors to make the decision on their behalf. And so it's with a heavy heart that we have to take this decision to actually increase the rate peg, but it should have been done by the New South Wales government in the first place.
Through you, Mayor, if you're talking actual or averages, so Auburn moves from 870 to 938, including the ASV. Former Holroyd goes from 1,015 to 1,019, which includes the ASV, and Parramatta goes from 937 to 955.
If we don't support this tonight, what we are going to face maybe 2 or 3 years down the track is a situation where we won't have money to pay for basic services that council operates. Look, it is painful for me to support this, but unfortunately we are in a position forced by the state government.
Councillors Kun Juan and Diane Coleman have both articulated that our hands are tied here, that we are forced to do this. It's a state government thing that...
We're very proud of what was done under the leadership over here, because we never raised the rates on our residents.
You call, or these people, councillors from that team call themselves our local community, which is absolutely ironical. They have no connection with the community. They have no understanding of the community. But I was very much connected with all the associations, all the community organizations. I'm still running not-for-profit organization in this council. And I know what was going through, what discussion was happening there. It was ridiculous to have 50K for Cumberland Council. It was ridiculous. And everyone was asking, why 50K? How can we get the money? And absolutely, there was no money. Now, when we are proposing to increasing it to 500K, and that's our proposal.
A number of councillors have said that we are being forced to pass this motion. Can I ask, General Manager, what's in the current financial year, is our budget a surplus or a deficit?
The last Q2 adjustment we had was showing a surplus. The income and expenditure statement forecast a $5 million surplus this year.
Whoa. Now, in terms of the budget, the draft budget that we're potentially putting forward, that we've all, as a council, have actually gone through, yes, it's a draft, but we're also expecting a surplus for next year, correct? based on your current budget that you're putting forward to us?
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Zada, can I just confirm that's the draft state, the next year's budget we're currently putting together?
That's it, the draft budget for next year. You're expecting a surplus also for next year?
Yeah, we're projecting a draft surplus next year of $3.5 million.
Okay, so when people are saying that council, us, are being forced to increase the rates, that's not necessarily true. We're not being forced. We're choosing to increase the rates because we're not in deficit. We're in surplus. All we're choosing to do is increase our surplus potentially next year from $3.5 million to possibly $4.7 million.
Thank you, Councillor Zada. You're going into debate now, but your answer gives you your
point. I'm asking the question of the General Manager. Would that be correct? So if this motion is put forward, would this not potentially increase your surplus, your current your draft surplus for next year from $3.5 million to $3.5 million plus $1.35 million? Would that be a correct assumption to make?
Through you, Mayor, Councillor, would give us an extra $1.3 million that we haven't budgeted for in the statements. So the answer.
Correct. Okay, so it's a choice. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
So through you, Mayor, Councillor Rami, just confirm. So if the 2.5%.
Listen, look.
Councillor Rami, it's been a long night, and you've asked.
So that gives them permission to be rude, both of them. That gives them permission then to be rude.
Councillor Rami, this is about your fourth time you've asked questions. Please just ask your.
Well, please zip it while I'm talking. If you want to talk about rudeness, maybe keep your mouth shut while I'm talking. I will keep shouting at you while you're rude. And I'm leaving too, don't worry about it. See you later. Yeah, see you later. Going home.
Can I call on the mover in reply?
Thank you, Mayor. If we keep going the way we're going, we're just going to go broke slowly. Your Councillor Christo, and this week he makes the announcement that he's going to be running for the federal, as independent, for the federal seat of Parramatta.
Madam Mayor, you can't be talking about things that have nothing to do, that weren't discussed.
I agree with you. I was just interested to see.
Okay, so can you please stop him there?
I agree.
Why do I need to remind you?
I agree with you. I was just going to see how he was going to make that relevant before I stopped him.
You would.
Right, I'm now putting this motion.
I call for division, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I'm sure we'll have a show of hands on this matter. All those in favour of the motion put by Councillors Elmore and Hussain, please raise your hands. That's Councillor Faruqi, Councillor Elmore, Councillor Hussain, Councillor Hamid, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Saha, Councillor Wang and Councillor Lake. And all those against, Councillor Cummings, Councillor Sarkis, Councillor Rami, Councillor Zeta, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Christou. I declare the matter carried.
Now look, I want to make a few points here because, and it flows on the back of this, we've got no money, let's raise our rates as well. We just got to the General Manager. Mr General Manager, did we get $1 million grant from the government? Sorry, Mr General Manager?
Yes.
We did?
Through you, Mayor, yes, we did.
Thank you. I asked why we weren't made aware of the grant as councillors, is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, yes, you did.
Thank you. Well, Madam Mayor, did you know about the grant?
I certainly did, Councillor Christou.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. So you knew about the grant. So here we are discussing that we have no choice. We have no choice other than to raise our rates because we don't have any money. But here we were given $1 million grant from the federal government to repair our roads. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I was waiting for clarification as to what this money was going to be applied to.
When we discuss that we have no financial choice, it's very important that when we receive grants, councillors are up to date and we're informed, so we know what money is coming in. We just sat here debating that we have no money and that we're forced to make we're forced to raise our rates on our residents because we have no money. But therefore, we just have point example here that we're given $1 million kick to our kitty to assist us to repair the potholes, to mow the verges, repair the footpaths, and all the other issues that Cumberland has. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'll turn now to the next matter, which is the notice of motion from Councillor Saha. Smart Cities number 2243.
We need to rethink the way our city is planned, built and managed.
But let me share some of the examples and how some of the initiatives we, Cumberland Council, we can adopt. Network street lighting can turn on and off automatically, reducing energy consumption, electricity cost, and carbon emissions. Smart connected street poles can be fitted with environmental sensors, people and vehicle counters, digital signage, and LED lights. Smart camera can capture real-time information about pedestrian and vehicle movement in the area. Madam Mayor, the data that these sensors capture will provide Council with information.
We move into closed session. We're in open council, and I'll record for the open council. For the record, the decision of closed council, item CO4/22-44, tender evaluation report, Granville Park Fields 3, 4 and 5, flood grading upgrade. Everybody, the time being 10:03 p.m, I declare the meeting closed.